When Order 66 occurred, the Jedi were gunned down mercilessly across the stars. Any of them that survived and went on the run did not last for very long, and soon they faced the terror of one Lord Vader, the Inquisitors, as well as the Purge Troopers. Darth Sidious was quite thorough in the measures he placed to get rid of the Jedi. Though many would go into hiding, the Inquisitors were very easily able to sniff them out, considering most of them had been former Jedi themselves. And of course, it was nearly impossible to avoid the detection of the new Sith Lord, Darth Vader. Because of this, the Jedi in hiding often stuck out since strange things always seemed to happen around them. But there was one class of Jedi that was not easy to find at all, one which Palpatine despised the most. In a previous video, we spoke all about the Jedi Shadows, those that belonged to the mysterious Sentinel class. While Sidious was mostly unconcerned with the Jedi following the rise of the Empire, it was the Jedi Sentinels that he was hell-bent on exterminating. Really, the only class of Jedi he was hell-bent on exterminating. To this end, he devised a master plan. And in today's Holocron, we are going to be covering the Jedi Order's most useful class, and how Palpatine made it a priority to root them out and destroy them. The Sentinels were the third classification of the Jedi Order. They were something of a middle ground between a Consular and a Guardian, balancing both disciplines of the Force and knowledge with negotiation as well as skill with the lightsaber. They were by far the most rounded Jedi. What set them apart though, was that they mostly relied on civilian expertise to get their jobs done. The Jedi didn't focus their time on constant lightsaber exercises or even practicing the Force. They acquired a host of skills that do not require Force sensitivity, which allowed them to accomplish tasks that neither the Guardians nor the Consulars could handle on their own. The Sentinels by far are the most obscure Jedi discipline. They do not follow the typical rules that the rest of the Jedi Order does. Besides those who served as the Temple Guards, Sentinels were often rarely seen at the Temple. This was because their philosophy led them to believe that the Jedi were far too isolated from the workings of the galaxy. They were so religiously blind to the Force that they believed that it would reveal everything to them. In the opinion of the Sentinel class though, it was possible to know too much about the Force, and if you knew next to nothing about intelligence gathering, computer splicing, technology surveillance, or espionage, as well as connected to the greater galaxy, you were failing as a Jedi. Because the Sentinels fill the gap between the other two disciplines, they tackle missions from which either group is optimized. At least that's what a Guardian or a Consular would say. But the truth of the matter is, the Sentinels only took the jobs that the Consulars and the Guardians did not want. The mark of the Sentinel was accomplishing tasks that other Jedi deemed impossible, and unlike the Consulars or Guardians who traveled between trouble spots, Jedi Sentinels remained there, attempting to bring peace to a single sector or even an entire planetary system. Back in the old days, the Sentinels were given the title of the Jedi Watchmen, and they spent their entire lives protecting a single area of space. They integrated themselves into civilian society, and took upon themselves the responsibility of welfare for a large region of space. There is a reason though why the yellow lightsaber of the Sentinel is so rarely witnessed. As the defined color of their discipline, the Sentinels rarely drew upon their golden blades unless it was absolutely necessary. This was because the Sentinels remained concealed until action was required. The creation of the Sentinel branch was far different than the other two. The ranks of the Sentinels included investigators, spies, tech specialists, saboteurs, and other experts. There were Sentinels that remained at the Temple, such as the Temple Guards, the Seekers, investigators, and the Jedi Artisans. These really were not much of a concern for Palpatine. They were mainly relegated to the Temple of Coruscant, and most of the time they were killed during Operation Nightfall. But it were the Sentinels still among the stars that he was worried about. Those expert slicers, tech experts, security, and of course, the Jedi Sentinel Shadows. The High Council often granted the Jedi Shadows more leeway in their study of the Force. This meant some of them understood the dark side much better than a normal Jedi would. Palpatine was not pleased with Jedi that were wise to the ways of the Sith, and knew exactly how to fight them, but less so was he pleased with Jedi who could easily slip through the cracks of the Empire's security. The Slicers were computer specialists who were able to infiltrate networks and leave absolutely no trace of their manipulation. Tech experts had a broader skill set than Slicers, as they were able to disassemble and reassemble any piece of technology, suiting their purposes for situations that they would need. Some of them even had the dark side ability known as Machu Daru, which would allow them to instantly understand and enforce their will over a piece of technology. Security experts were known for their ability to disarm traps and silence alarms. They understood the Force's limitations, which is why they relied on technology for countermeasures or specialized covert missions. And finally, the Shadows were possibly the most knowledgeable Jedi of the dark side of this entire era. They were also the most respected members of the Sentinels. Their task was hunting and vanquishing all traces of the dark side, whether those be ancient teachings, artifacts, or in extreme cases, people. They were tasked with the destruction and assassination. This was simple, but they were also required to be spies and saboteurs. Due to their constant interactions with the dark side, the Sentinels knew how to detect it, and some were even allowed to study Form 7 Juya lightsaber combat. This was something that shook Palpatine to his core, something that he could not abide by. It should be noted that after Order 66, Emperor Palpatine put a high price on Jedi bounties, and of course formulated the entire Inquisitor branch to hunt down any remaining Jedi. In reality though, he was relatively unconcerned with whether or not a few stragglers were left behind. There was a part of Palpatine that wanted the Jedi alive so that they could experience what the Sith had for 1,000 years, watching from the shadows of a society that had abandoned them. He took pleasure in knowing that he had officially turned their beloved Republic against them, and relished in the fact that they had to live as terrified nomads, running from death. Having said that though, there were several key Jedi that he wanted dead at any cost, those too dangerous to be left alive, Jedi such as Anya Kuro, the Dark Woman. But it was the Sentinels that Palpatine was extremely concerned about leaving alive. They were street smart, they had abilities to hide, skills in subterfuge, and a clever network of underground contacts, knowledge of the dark side. The Sentinels were easily the greatest threat to the rise of the Empire. Imagine a rebel alliance with a healthy supply of slicers, security experts, or even shadows to help them. It was a devastating flaw to the growth of the Empire, and the Sentinels needed to be rooted out. To that end, Sidious decided to do what he did best, take his enemy's greatest strength and manipulate it, turn it against them. The Sentinels heavily relied on one thing: civilians and the public. Using fear and greed, these strengths were now the Sentinels' weakness. Palpatine offered inordinately high prices on the heads of Jedi Sentinels, and also provided great opportunities within the Empire to anyone who decided to turn over the local Jedi protectors. If incentives of money and security were not convincing though, then Palpatine would send in the Stormtroopers or the Inquisitors to offer a more forceful method of cooperation. Quickly, the public that the Sentinels not only learned from, but also served their entire lives, turned on them, sold them out to the Empire. When a Sentinel's greatest skill is their concealment, they have little else to turn when their cover is blown. Emperor Palpatine once made a comment that they would be very difficult to find since they integrate with society so seamlessly, and he even suspected that most of the Purge survivors, even to date, were Jedi Sentinels. But that didn't stop Palpatine from going to extreme measures to turn over every rock to find them. They were the only class of Jedi that he obsessed over. The biggest threat to the Sentinels were the Inquisitors. Despite their impressive ninja-like reputation though, the Sentinels were not as good of fighters as the Guardians were. As we mentioned, it was rare that they actually had to activate their lightsabers in active combat, and as a result, the Inquisitors surrounded and overwhelmed them. This was an extremely effective tactic. The Inquisitors hunted as a pack of wolves, taking down a lone target. The hardest part of the Inquisitors' job was finding the Sentinels. The story was a little different when it came to the Shadows, however. The information we have here is very limited in the lore, but we are told that while Shadows were not easily killed off, the Jedi Shadows did eventually end up succumbing to the dark side. The Shadows had it the worst of the entire Jedi Order of the Purge. They saw morality as black and white, and the Shadows took the hard job that no other Jedi was ever suited for. Interacting so often with the dark side through artifacts, or having to kill people, caused their psyche to become more unstable than the rest of the Order. The Council of First Knowledge in the Order would deploy the Jedi Shadows sparingly because they had developed an undesirable trait, such as paranoia being a main one. They experienced horrific anxiety over their job, and believed that all Jedi had an aptitude to turn to the dark side and become a threat. They saw the dark side in everything and everyone. But after they were betrayed by the Republic, saw the rest of the Jedi sold out by the civilians that they had protected, the people that they had risked their sanity to protect, they became truly lost. The Sith had been behind everything, and this is what snapped their psyche. Unfortunately, we lack a lot of specifics with what happened to the Shadows, but what we do know is that they were eventually exterminated, but not through hunting them down and killing them with the lightsaber. Sidious destroyed everything that they were meant to be. He turned their very purpose against them, making them some of the most tragic Jedi figures in all of the lore. This was the class of Jedi that Sidious hated the most, and what drove them to extermination. Sidious was wise to get rid of these Jedi, or at least discourage them from taking any action against the Empire. We would love a story arc in the future exploring the life of the Sentinels, showing just how different they were from the traditional Jedi. A story about the Sentinels during or after the Republic era would be amazing, especially if we got to see what happened once they started turning to the dark side in droves. But having a single Jedi Shadow who survived Order 66 being hunted down by all of his other brothers who have turned to the dark side, while he himself struggles with his own feelings, his experience with betrayal, his experience with the dark side. This is a story that I would absolutely love to see. But anyway, friends, had you thought the Jedi Sentinels were this dangerous to the Empire? And would you like to see them represented more in Star Wars media? Let us know your thoughts down below. And as always, thank you so much for visiting the archives today, and may the Force be with you.